sier vi velkommen til Fredrik. Fredrik, hører du oss? Vi hører ikke det.
Har ni ikke meg?
Jo, der var du. Velkommen til Fredrik.
Takk. And perhaps I should switch to English. I don't know if there's any English or speaking person in the audience, so I'll do this in English if it's okay, and then we can take the discussions afterwards, perhaps in Swedish, Norwegian, English, Dutch, any language. Okay, should we start? Yes. So I will talk about quality as a science. This is a topic that is quite dear to me due to the fact that I wrote an article a year ago, and where I really went all into the word complex, because I've heard the word complex being said so many times. Oh, this is really complex. This is really complex. So I dove into that question or that word a lot. So this is what I found out. I'm sorry that I'm not being able to be there with you in physical form and shape today, and the why that is so, it has a lot of it's a complex matter, but one of the reasons was that I this morning felt obligated to attend a demonstration where the local politicians are threatening to close down my kids' school. So this was me in this demonstration during this morning. And a decision to close down a school is a complex decision. It's not only money, it's about how kids actually how they learn, if they are being able to go to the school and go home by themselves, or should they take transportation, public transportation. So I have a big understanding that it's a complex decision, but we were obligated to actually speak our view of it. So the politicians been able to gather this as an indicator of how we are thinking. And why I'm telling this story is that it actually has some sort of bearing on what I'm going to speak about in this topic actually now. Due to the fact that complex decisions is based on many kinds of different kind of inputs. But let's start with the Boulding systems hierarchy. Boulding was one of the researchers or the scientists that actually tried to categorize different kind of systems in a scale of from very low complexity to high complexity. And he started with the mechanical systems in the bottom, and then of course the real-time regulating systems, and then we have the biological systems, the organisms, and then we have human beings and society, and then we have cosmos, transcendental systems. And the reason of why I'm talking about this is that a couple of decades ago, yes, IT and systems development were perhaps could be seen as a mechanical system. It was batches that run overnight. It was inputs and outputs, and you knew that for every input, you knew that the output was going to be the same. But then the complexity grew. It's continuously is growing, the complexity, because we have microservices that actually have its own little life. We have learning components in our system landscape. and we have integrations, and then of course we also connect the users to this system, to this ecosystem, and then it gets even more complex. So what I'm saying is that it's not only source code. It all starts with source code, but the source code affects a system landscape that actually affects perhaps our learning components, that actually affects our users, and in the end also affects how we live, how we can actually thrive in a sustainable world. I'm working today with systems that is dependent on public transportation, but also healthcare. So the source code, the lines that we actually write today, they will actually affect how people live their lives tomorrow. And how can we relate to this as software developers or testers? Some people choose to not see this complexity because they are thinking that our work is actually taking the Jira ticket or the product backlog item in Azure DevOps and take it from to be developed to done, and then I go to the next. But some developers and testers actually see that, yeah, but what I'm doing actually has an effect. I'm curious of studying that effect. And that's why we talk about different kind of models in agile development. One of them, and that's perhaps a little bit of more simple model than this, is the Canadian framework. And it divides problems in 4 different kind of domains. And it's a good model because it actually tells the story of how we work in a simple world at the same time as we live and operate in a complex world. So clean, the first problem domain is clean or simple domain, and that's when you categorize the problem and you just fix it. You can calculate it. And then we have complicated problems, and that is something that you can actually sort out if you have an expert or you have an architectural model that can actually find the answer to you or for you. But then it gets more complex, and that is when the problem actually is so severe that you don't know the answer beforehand. You can't know the answer beforehand. And that's questions like, will it work? Have you tested enough? Will it work in production? And that's a complex question tied to a complex system. And when we go into that domain, we need to have another way of approaching software testing. We need to measure things. We need to collect data. We need to analyze that data in order to understand the patterns. And let me dive into that more of how to do that. But then we also have the transcendent, the cosmic problem domain that we don't see any patterns whatsoever. The pandemic was one of those chaotic or catastrophic era where nothing was known to us, and that's a scary place to be in, because then you need to act and then you can study the consequences of your actions. But let's focus on the comparison or the difference between complex and complicated for now. And one of the most crucial differences between the complicated system and a complex system is that the complicated system is deterministic. You know that if you just go through the recipe, if you just follow the instructions from the expert that you're listening to, you will be successful in the end. It might take time, but you will succeed. In a complex setting, you don't know if you put one value into the system, you don't know if you get the same result if you test it all over again. Have you ever tested a long, complex end-to-end test scenario? That's a complex matter because you have so many variables and so many things that can go wrong. So end-to-end business tests or end-to-end testing is actually something that touches the complex project domain. And when we go into that domain, we need to have another set of tooling, another set of methods, another set of model in our heads when we work in this sort of environment. Because if we actually look upon what the academia say that complexity is, it is a complex system consists of a number of agents, a number of nodes that actually interacts with each other. And these agents or these nodes are autonomous, and the value comes and emerges when these agents actually work together. And the system is never in any equilibrium, which means it has diseases, it has things that go wrong. There's no static state. And you have the butterfly effect. If something goes wrong in one end, it can actually have catastrophic effects in another end. It is self-healing, it's self-organized, and it evolution and it transforms together with its surroundings. So if you could understand, and I've done this analogy a lot of times, that you can actually address these kind of definition of a complex system on a human being, where you see all the organs as these kind of nodes, but you can also approach a system landscape and look upon each subsystem as a node in this system. And then you understand that it is actually a complex system that you're dealing with. And then the V model here in the right side of this picture perhaps is not sufficient for us as software developers anymore. It's a good model, and it has served us well once we are working inside the complicated project domain. But now I'm using more of the other side, the left side, the voice model. Value, objectives, indicators, confidence, and experience. It is described in the book Quality for DevOps Teams. But it talks about measuring indicators, and it talks about the amount of confidence that we see in our system if it's able to provide the value once we experience it. And I think it's a better model to be used when you're working in a complex domain, because it talks about confidence. Confidence, you can ask a developer, what kind of confidence do you feel that the system will actually work? We can talk about feelings, but we can also talk about confidence levels, which means statistically we can calculate. And then we also talk about indicators. In a simple or complicated system, we only perhaps need one or two indicators, and that is amount of test cases, or if it has been actually run, and the results of those test cases. But in a complex system landscape, we actually need to gather a better variety of indicators, and some of them are listed in these kind of categories. We are looking into business related indicators. We're talking about how we IT delivery related indicators, how fast we can actually develop or put something in production, how we are feeling or working in a team. Do we have the right abilities in the team? Are we happy while we develop? Are we curious, or are we just stressed? And of course, the amount of incidents that we are perhaps not always creating, but stumble into, because if you talk to a doctor who is treating a patient, they will always have that sense of insecurity. Will this treatment actually, how will the patient respond to my treatment? And the same goes for a mature developer. How will the user respond to my feature, or how will subsystem X that is in the system landscape actually react when we put this new database into production? And the same goes for developers, and the same goes for testers. And sometimes I work with development teams and saying, let's talk test, and they say, get out, there's the door. But if I talk about informational need, if I talk about what are you curious about this system that you're developing, what do you want to know about it, there is a completely different kind of dialogue. And what should we do when we gather with all these kind of indicators? What should we do with the data that we gather? That's the next question. And I think this is the main point that I'm going to make today, is that there's no singular value with data. It's what we use the data for, because you can actually, some people say that you can prove anything with statistics, and that's true. But I think it's good that we understand data, that we understand information in a complex setting, and that we also understand or learn how to talk about data. And this is a model to explain the difference in the word cause and correlation, or causation and correlation. Because when it's get warm outside, ice cream sales go up. And also people that actually ask for help in the hospitals from sunburn. But you can also see a correlation between then ice cream sales and people that are suffering from sunburn. But the cause is actually the sun. So this is quite logical if you see it. But if we go into our domain, where we can actually say that the cause is that people will actually talk to each other. Developers will talk to product owners, and they will measure things in production and understand the business side. And from that discussion, perhaps they are able to express some kind of business rules in a spec flow, executable business-driven development script. Then we have a executable requirement specification that we can continuously run, and we can always know that the system is fulfilling this this rule. And then we can also see that perhaps we have much fewer incidents in production this last year. Perhaps it's due to the fact that we introduced spec flow as a way to execute our scripts. And this is a dangerous way of seeing a correlation and say that just because we used a certain tool, we got fewer incidents in production. So when we work as a software engineer or a tester, quality engineer, or a quality assurance specialist in these kind of organizations, we should always know how to read data, how to get back to the cause of certain things, because it's a complex setting and you don't know actually what was the perhaps root cause of things. And actually there is a site called Spurious Correlations that actually lists these kind of fun correlations. Perhaps you can see that the graph of number of people who drowned by falling into a pool has a funny correlation with films with Nicolas Cage in it. And you can also see that there's a strange correlation between cheese consumption and number of people who died from their bed sheets. And this is the domain that we're stumbling into as a software tester, to look and understand data and trying to understand how people, or how the data actually correlates, and what is the actual cause and effect of things. And I saw Halloween was just a couple of weeks ago, and I saw this on the internet. To infer is something that actually draw a conclusion. To draw a conclusion from correlations, nothing scares me the most. And actually, this is of course a professor, but it's quite funny. So you need to actually understand what's behind the data, and then you will be able to beware of these fall pits. One thing that happened this fall was that actually I was working with a patient journal system, and we said that even though that this patient journal system, if it works, it has its functions, but what happens if the data is wrong? What happens if a doctor that works with a patient actually, that there's a miscalculation of the drug dose? I think you understand, everyone is in understanding that the consequences of that could be catastrophic. So we say that there is one side of our job is to actually verify that the functions are okay, but there is also a just as much importance to actually verify that the data is correct. And we took in a data analyst or a data scientist in our test team, and he was talking about data, and we're talking about if we can't check all the patient journals in the system today, we need to do a statistical, we need to do a sample. And in the end, when a data scientist is talking to a software tester, they exchange and understand each other. And actually, this tester actually in the end was using words like stratifiering, stratific, which means there's a statistical way of extracting a sample from a population. And this is the magic that I want to introduce to you, that perhaps there's a need of software testers that actually understand statistics. Me, I failed the mathematical statistics courses in college 3 times because I didn't understand what I should do with it, but I've understood it now. And I think it's important for us to understand as software testers that working evidence-based or working, there is different kind of way of looking of the truth. And the academia knows this. There is a hierarchy of evidence. And if we convert this to software testing, it's maybe looking like this. I mean, the lowest level of confidence that we can actually stumble into is when, the developer says, yeah, it works. Then you know that you need to check this for yourself, and then you check it for yourself, and then you go into a higher level of confidence. Yeah, I've seen it work. But the next step is perhaps you should try and test it from a very kind of different kind of negative tests. And in the end, you should actually use automation to actually perhaps do simulations, do it 2,000 times and see what the results are. Do we have deviations? Were the system able to cope with this load? Then we have strong evidence, and you need to be able to, as a software tester, understand what kind of confidence level do we actually need in this particular setting that we are in today. So this is what I'm actually telling, and this is what I'm actually working with, together with the testers that I'm working within the teams, to actually know what kind of and talk about the system and the confidence levels that we actually need in order to be able to develop this in a sustainable path. So what I'm actually saying is that I'm working with a lot of testers and a lot of data scientists to actually try to make them understand each other. And in the end, we were able to perhaps, my goal and my vision is to see and be able to express that we actually are able to make reliable prognosis of, if you change that source code in that way, you will actually affect the user in this way. It's the high likelihood of it will be a successful or positive effect is this, and the likelihood of side effects are this, so that people can take conscious decisions already today and be aware of the pitfalls that might come. Because in history, testers were known to be also completely also be reactive. Now we're looking into software testing as something in real time. Do it work? Does it work now in production? But in the end, we need to be able to make reliable prognosis, and that will need different kind of specialities and we need to understand the science behind data. So that is perhaps my talk of today. There's more to read and also in the end contact me if you want. But that's the story of today, I think.